Welcome to the Church of Mabus radio show. It's Friday night, 7:03 p.m. Central. You're listening to United Public Radio. Joe's getting hit by some kind of tropical storm. I forgot her name already, Gerda or something, but
Claudia.
Claudia. Okay.
Well,
Claudia. Let me see.
Martha. Martha the
The,
hurricane.
the little girl from Interview the Vampire. I get it.
Yeah, right.
But anyway, it's supposed to be doing something to us for 2 or 3 days. So there's big rain percentages and flash flood warnings and all that stuff. Hopefully it'll pass us, but it's still gray. It's gray out. So I mean, it's obviously going to do something, but not as bad as Joe's area, I don't think. But he's getting hit hard with it. All right, we got Wham here with us tonight. And then, next Friday we're off, so taking a little break for the 4th of July.
4th of July. Well, that's not next weekend. That's the next weekend after.
Yeah, I get it mixed up. That's right. It's not. We have a guest next week. That's Michelle from the network. She's going to be talking about Romania and Transylvania. That's right. I mixed it up. The second, we're not going to be here. So that's what I meant. It's going to be the 4th of July. So trying to go to some places around here and nature and stuff with Christina, but man, the heat is just like crazy. It's like crazier than ever. The humidity, you go outside for 2 minutes and you're just pouring sweat. That's how hot it is down here. It truly is the Amazon. And it just seems like every year it gets worse in Florida. But that's Michelle Disrocher's Transylvania Lore, her visit to Romania. That's next week. We're going to talk about some Vlad the Impaler. That's right. So she's from the network. So that should be a good one. Let me see here. And Jay will be with us when we return. Tonight's guest, Kiki Dombrowski. How are you doing? Did I say that correctly? I think I did.
You did. You said it correctly. Thank you so much. I know it's a mouthful. It's a beautiful, strong Polish last name.
Cool. Well, it's great to have you here. And your new book is A Curious Future. And it's great to have you here. And Stephanie Quick introduced us. And she's been helping to get some guests. I've had weird luck with the COVID stuff and getting guests. So it's good. Stephanie just gave the hookup. So she just kind of flew the jet over and the red carpet. And here we go. She's been doing pretty good.
Stephanie's good for that.
Yeah, definitely. She's coming on in July. So
wonderful.
Yeah, make sure I'm on that show.
Definitely. I think you are. I'll have to double check.
What day is it? Do you know?
I'll get back with you. I know I have it written down. I need to make the page and everything. I'm pretty sure it may be like the end of July. I'll have to double check. I'll let you know. But she's supposed to be gathering info about pet afterlife stuff for my misery of missing my dog that passed. And then who knows what else will go on. But that's a little part of it. She's just doing some research and stuff for that. So throwing a show on that. And I'm sure we'll talk about some other stuff. Well, Kiki, your book, A Curious Future, it just came out, or it's about to, or
something.
Something, yes. It's available for pre-order right now. So you can order it. The official release date is July 13th. So that's coming up super quick. That's right around the corner.
So what about the giveaway? Do you want to talk about that before we get started?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely. I was thinking that we could do a giveaway for your Facebook group because it's such an active and wonderful community. I could go ahead and I will just post a nice photo that just says giveaway. Anybody that wants to be in the drawing to win a free copy of A Curious Future can leave a comment, and I don't know, we'll do a drawing in a couple days, maybe on a Sunday or Monday, and whoever wins, we'll get in touch with them and send them a book.
So they just have to leave a comment, or what?
Sure.
Okay, cool.
Do you want to make it more challenging? We can make something. We could quiz them.
I don't know. If something comes to mind right now, my head's pretty blank, but if something comes up, let me know. If Wham, you think of something, but a comment, I don't know right now, but maybe something will come up. If y'all think of anything, let me know. But either way, whatever you're comfortable with. So I
Oh,
look forward
thank
to
you.
that for sure.
Yeah.
And if you can, just give us the audience a little bit of background from you, like your bio, so to speak.
My bio.
Just a
Okay.
little bit. How did you
A
get
little
into
one.
these subject matters?
He always makes you do your autobiography. That's
A
That's
little bit.
totally fine. Yeah, I know. And it's like, well, where do we start? And
Origins.
yeah, I know. Well, I always feel like I was a little bit unusual. I, always, had a more otherworldly touch. Even as a child, I was the kid that always had imaginary friends. And I kind of stumbled into divination and witchcraft early on. So it was even when I was about 13 years old that I started to work with tarot. Obviously, I wasn't reading for clients at 13 years old, but at that point I started to study it and really become devoted to the idea that we could use different tools and methods to be able to engage with things that might be beyond our five senses. So very early on, I became involved with that. I started studying witchcraft, and at this point, as you guys know, I'm turning 40 tomorrow. So it's been quite a long time that I've been, acquiring information and research on all different types of divination and methods for not only predicting the future, but receiving different messages and information that maybe divinity or however you want to phrase that is the universe is sending to you.
Definitely. And I know in your dedication, Jessica Robbins, she was an amazing woman who always supported my writing and correctly predicted future events at the time of my birth. Who is that?
That is amazing. I'm so happy that we're giving a nod to Jessica. Jessica was a woman who worked with my mother in Connecticut, and they were very, very close. And apparently, when I was born, yay, tomorrow, on my birthday, when Jessica first saw me as, just a couple days old, she looked at my mother and said, this girl is going to end up in London and in Paris. And I ended up studying in Paris, and then I also ended up studying in Nottingham, England. So I always like to say that she was able to predict that I would end up being a world traveler just by seeing me as an infant. I thought that was a really impressive prediction. And she was also a writer who supported my writing all along, whether it was creative or nonfiction, whether it was poetic and artistic or, academic essays. She was always a wonderful, very kind-hearted, very eclectic woman. So I always liked her.
And I noticed you in your bio it says in Savannah. Were you born in Georgia? That's where I'm from. I'm in Florida now.
Oh, awesome. No, I'm from Connecticut originally, and I grew up right in central Connecticut, looked exactly like the Gilmore Girls, actually. I just a very heartfelt New Englander spirit, but I ended up, after I was done with school, I moved to Nashville, and I spent, oh my gosh, maybe like 12 or 13 years in Nashville, and very, very recently moved to Savannah. Even though it's a recent move, I'm very familiar with Savannah. Some of my closest friends live out here. And so I had been driving back and forth between Savannah and Nashville for years. And we finally made the leap. And now we're on the islands. We're 15 minutes from the beach, and it's heavenly. It's very, very soothing.
I remember something in Savannah with St. Patrick's Day, like a parade and green beer and weirdness a long time ago. That's all I remember. Not much, but I remember being there at some point a long, long time ago. But yeah, I was born in Georgia and had a
Great.
lot of weird paranormal stuff happen to me in Georgia. So it's just, I've had some stuff here happen too, but my Goldie oldies were in Georgia for sure. There's definitely some wild stuff there, but I lived there 20 years and then now I'm in Florida. They're both hot.
Yes, very.
Definitely. And so I guess one thing I wanted to ask you about, and we can get into the book deeper. I know that you were into mythology. What made you get into mythology? Is I find mythology fascinating because so many of the different ones have similar creatures. Like, you got Norse giants, and Greek has some similarities with those kind of creatures. And then you even got, native folklore and those kind of stories that, have strange giants and little people. Of course, in Norse, you have little people. So it's just kind of fascinating if you a little bit about mythology, if you could. I know it's a big subject, but just is that one of the main things you got into first?
Wow, that's a really wonderful question, and honestly, nobody's ever asked me. I think that I kind of it was very easy for me to lean into mythology. I went, through school, and while in sort of like my academic career, I was also studying witchcraft and magic, and it felt really compatible to be able to go study witchcraft at, a metaphysical shop or with a group of people, but then also go to a college class and, learn about Celtic mythology or, like you said, like Norse mythology. Those were really the two that I focused on. And so, I think that I just fell into it because the stories and the lessons of the ancient gods and goddesses are still powerful for us today, and they could still offer us lessons. And I also love how I feel like everybody has certain gods and goddesses that they gravitate towards, and I really enjoy that. I like the idea that people find a mythology, a certain myth or a certain culture or a certain god or certain goddess where they're like, wow, this really resonates with me. This resonates with something I'm going through, or a personality trait that I'm working on, or maybe I'm doing some shadow work and I need to know how the gods and goddesses got through this. And so I think that mythology is valuable because it can help us grow, and maybe have a deeper sense of self, or even a deeper sense of why we're here. Maybe, I don't know. It's a great question. And plus, it's a good story, right? Like, they're so fascinating and strange and interesting, and there's so many. It's just like, I don't even know where to begin.
Yeah, it's a big subject for sure. We had Frater UD on. He writes a lot of books for Littlewood. He's like a wizard dude, like really, like he's like Gandalf came to the show. But we were talking about some of the weird stuff. I know we talked with Stephen Flowers too. Some of the weird like Thor Yahweh stuff, like people actually saying there may be similarities. And I did some searches on Google with that, and there's a lot of stuff that came up, and that really just starts blowing.
Oh, he got frozen.
He sure did.
Yeah.
I was worried it was me, but yeah. Oh no.
No, just let he may come back. It's all right. So keep so what I was only half listening to what he was saying. So I'm sorry. Did you kind of get a sense of what he was trying to ask you?
Well, I guess in a way, what I could say is this is, I think he's talking about how there are similarities between different myths. And I really like that idea that, it almost makes me think of the hero's journey, how the hero kind of goes through different steps and experiences or encounters different missions, events, people, archetypes. And there's such a similarity. Oh, he's totally gone now.
Suppose there, Jill, get him back up there. So
that's good.
This happened last week during a storm.
Oh, no kidding. Yeah. So yeah, I guess that it is really interesting. You can read about, or if you're very, very interested about one type of mythology, for example, maybe you really like Norse mythology, since we were talking about Stephen Flowers. That's the first thing that came to mind, especially since he mentioned Thor. It is really interesting to go, okay, are there any gods or goddesses within Norse mythology that I can connect to, Greco-Roman mythology? What about like the love goddesses? Like I think of like Freya versus, Venus or Aphrodite. What do they have in common? How are they different? How do they service the people around them, or what is their magic? What are their capabilities? So yeah.
Hold on, I just got a message from Jeff.
No problem.
He got completely thrown off the internet, so he's trying to get back on right now. Yeah, I mean, well, in looking at the similarities between different different mythological systems, I mean, I guess I've kind of come full circle with this myself, because of course there are going to be similar, to me it's like, of course there are going to be similarities between, Norse and Celtic and Greek and Roman mythology, or even Northern Indian mythology, because they're all Indo-European.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to share similar language and cultural structures. And to me, the more interesting question is what happens when you go further afield than that. And you do find some interesting, I think you do find some interesting parallels, because everybody loves, all the biological functions are basically the same, right? Mm-hmm. So everybody loves, everybody has, all cultures have conflict, so you're going to have some hero gods and that kind of stuff. But I think sometimes we have to be really careful about how homogenizing we're being with all of these kinds of mythologies, because there are also some significant differences if you go beyond kind of, especially some of the common tropes that are used. There are some startling similarities, but sometimes those startling similarities are like deeper than what might be sort of understood, and so that, and how does that play out then in the divinatory systems that you've looked at in your book, and how those divinatory systems may reflect both similarities and some differences, So I don't know, because I looked at your book and I read chunks of it, and because I got like a preview copy of it, and you pretty much cover the gamut of what is most, I guess, commonly thought of as divinatory practices. So of those practices, which did you think were the most interesting or maybe unusual for your experience?
That's a great question. And I love the comment that you made about how, we still have to recognize that even though we see some overlapping similarities between, mythologies, that they still come from different places and different regions. And yeah, thank you for that. That's awesome. And oh gosh, my favorite divination or most interesting, and I'm pausing because the reason I'm being quiet, I'm just really kind of going through the Rolodex, because I really had such a fantastic time working with all the different divination. And so I guess that, okay, I'm going to talk about the bones and the trinkets, because that's something that I really found to be fascinating. And it was something that I had never tried before. It was something that was brand new to me. And just, to give a little bit of a background to the listeners, bone and trinket kits, and I could actually have mine in front of me. Cool. So there are, and I should preface by saying this too, that the book is meant to be a gateway into divination. Right. It's really meant to help you explore and think about, wow, I really like X, Y, and Z, therefore I'm going to go off and really deep dive into X, Y, and Z. And so for me, the bone divination is something where I highly recommend that people just explore the different traditions and styles that are out there that go along with bone and trinket divination. And I'm just kind of going to, I just make sure that I get her name correct. So there's her name's Michelle Jackson, and she is somebody that writes about bones in a book called Bones, Shells, and Curios. I highly recommend that book as well. But for me, what bone and trinket divination means is I would collect various trinkets, various ethically sourced bones, and put them together into a kit. So trying to think of, here's an example. Like I'm going to hold it up really closely. And sorry, I'm getting my nails done tomorrow, so they look a little. I didn't think I was going to be doing like hand modeling.
I bitten off nails here.
Oh, so this is like a raccoon tooth. And let me find another fun one. This is a coral crystal, a crystallized coral fossil that I found in Tennessee. And basically what I did was I assigned a divination interpretation to each of the trinkets. And everybody has different methods for, sort of like casting the lot or picking out different divination pieces. But for me, what I do is I have a whole bunch.
There he is.
Yeah. Are you holding a divination kit right now too?
Oh, no, when you were talking, you reminded me of something. So go ahead.
Cool. Yeah. And so basically what I do is I gently, and I say gently toss because I don't want to break anything or damage any of the pieces, but I gently toss all the trinkets into into a circle, and anything that stays within the circle, I interpret where they land, and also keep in mind what each of the little trinkets means to me to give a reading. I think for me, that was the most interesting because it's such a personal kit, and I love tarot. Like tarot was my first love, and it's something that I'm obsessed to talk about. But the bone and trinket kit felt extremely personal, and it was really easy to connect with it because each thing was like this very, very personal thing that I added, like a coin that my father gave me from when he lived in Italy, what else do I have in here? I'm obsessed with Shenandoah, and I have an acorn from Shenandoah. So I'm just sharing examples because the bone and trinkets can be an opportunity to use things that have this highly charged memory in them. And not to mention too, when you're working with bones, you're working with spirit and essence from an animal that once lived here with us on planet Earth. And so I think that's really powerful as well. So it's probably a long-winded answer, but that's probably my favorite or the most interesting one that I wrote about or started to dive into. It's become a really like a favorite kit of mine to kind of reach towards and see what lands.
Yeah, well, that's interesting that you say that because I've been working. I mean, I have been working with some indigenous teachers here where I live in New York, and they, there are some specific methods of divination that are traditional.
Yes.
That they use, but there are also ways in which they talk about and teach, I guess, what one of them calls sort of natural divination, which is just sort of reading the signs of things that come to you in nature. Like one of my teachers has really introduced me to, pretty well introduced me to the methods of reading birds, the birds that come like into your yard or into your vision, and seeing the patterns of them, because at least when you start doing that, you'll start to see that birds don't just sort of haphazardly stop by. They seem to come in groups or at certain times, and it's really interesting because it forces you to see patterns beyond beyond kind of the human perception of our own reality, that we live in our little houses or big houses, and nature's sort of out there. We go into nature like nature isn't in our house. And when I start, and I've started doing that with other animals too. And I actually started doing it years ago with spiders. Spiders come and talk to me about stuff. So whenever they do, I mean, they're always like there when there's something important where they want to get my attention. I can't even tell you how many times it has happened that I'll be like doing something and I need to pay attention in the next to something important, and a spider will literally come down in front of me in the ceiling. That's happened while I've been lecturing in classes. And all of a sudden a spider will come in, and I can remember once I just stopped the class and I said, I'm getting a message. and just, they watch me just take this spider and put it over here. But it was, it's really interesting tuning into animals like that, because I do think that the universe talks to you all the time.
I love that.
You just have to sort of pay attention to it.
That's fantastic. And I think that's really fascinating that you're learning to observe, birds. It's ornithomancy. And do you find that there are certain birds that represent certain messages to you, or do you find that there are certain flight patterns or songs that you hear that represent special things?
Well, it's mostly the way in which it's the manner in which the birds appear. Mm-hmm. I have a very strong affinity for raptors, and a lot of times they will do things like fly in front of my car or fly right over the top of me or something like that. But then there are other birds too. So there's been this one, I don't know what kind of bird it is. I haven't seen it yet. I haven't heard it before. It's been out in the quince tree behind the house, and I call it the Tweedly bird because it's got this really melodious song. This
that's lovely.
Yeah, it's sort of, and it's very ebullient, and it's clearly trying to say something, but I'm not familiar with it. So it's been doing this for several days. So whenever it happens, I go outside and I just sit there and listen to it to see if I can. First of all, I want to try to see it, because if I can see it, then I can I know what it is, But it's been out there for a while, so I don't know. It's telling me something. It's a happy song.
Well, that's wonderful too. And I wonder too if we can also, intuitively create interpretations based on our response to how we feel when we see them or interact or hear them. And so, to have that response of, well, the song is really beautiful and it's happy, that must be an encouraging and positive message.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been happier lately for a variety of reasons, which is probably good. Yeah, I haven't been happy for a while. So I look, every morning I hear the Tweedly bird. That's why I refer to it as the Tweedly bird.
I like that. I'm, maybe in the next edition, I'll write in, if you hear the Tweedly birds, it's a good sign.
The other thing that I encourage people to do, because I've done this, is I get together with friends and we'll do, we'll sort of, they're not really, I guess they're sort of divination. They kind of become this, but we'll talk about what's really been going on with us on a deeper level. We'll just bring a bunch of magazines and newspapers and stuff, and we'll spread them out, and then we'll make little decks with pictures that we find that express certain aspects of the way we feel about our lives right now, and then we'll share them. And sometimes they do sort of become decks, in other words, they I have one here that I did, and I do really weird things. I don't know if you can see this.
I like that.
But it says up the top, it says someone else's underwear. Because that was reflecting a sense of alienation that I had about something. And then this picture here, right? This is, one of those things from Yellowstone. And one of those geyser things, and the caption says, "Wanting to leap, but you'll die." So those are the kinds of things. Or this one, I came up with this represented where I was at the time. It says facing cereal, and then the next one was being cereal.
Oh my God. That's wonderful though. That's so like artistic and creative and abstract, and like people can like look at it and come up with, like, wow, that's so meaningful. I love that you and your friends get together and create these. That's like such a great way to spend time with your friends.
Well, and then what we do is we share them and then talk about what they mean, and then we'll do like little readings with each other with them.
Oh, I love it.
So it's sort of like little decks as games sort of thing. So it's kind of fun.
It sounds like a good time. That sounds like a good get together with friends.
Oh yeah, alcohol makes it even funnier.
Yeah, I could imagine. It gives it a different a twist, I guess.
So Jeffrey, can you hear us? Are you back?
I've returned from the murky depths. I don't know. Last week I was having trouble with the internet too. I don't know what's going on. I'm going to have to move to I'm on a laptop, so eventually I'm going to move to the desktop probably for next show, and then I'm going to probably get a new mic. But I don't know. Maybe it's because it's real gray outside, and sometimes it disconnects. I don't know, but usually it never does it ever. So I don't know why it just started doing it last week with the last week's show, and now this time. So hopefully it doesn't do it as much as it did last time. But I have no idea why. Only thing I can think of is there's bad weather. It's really gray out, and maybe it's just disconnecting. I don't know, but normally doesn't do it. So, but I know where I'm at right now. The hospice situation with Christina's grandmother has dementia. There's just a lot of anxiety and stress from it, and there's just been a lot of weird stuff going on. So it doesn't kind of surprise me. I don't think it's paranormal per se, but it usually don't happen. But it just seems like one thing after another lately. Like there's just a lot of anxiety in the air from it. We just had to get a hospital bed for her this morning and have the guy set it up and all that stuff. It's just a lot of energy. And but nonetheless, I noticed in your book, Kiki, that there was a stone called Merlinite.
Yes.
What is? I mean, my first thing is that named after Merlin, and I just never had heard of it. What is that stone? I know it's got a Stonehenge connection, so I was like, maybe it is. I don't know.
Well, hang on one second because I'm going to do a little. I wish that I had. It's so funny. Like I have like this beautiful library, and my office is on the other side of the house. So, so Merlinite.
It says it's from Robert Simmons and Book of Stones.
Yeah, that's a great book, by the way. That is like oh my God, I could see it over on a shelf just outside. So Merlinite, and I have so many stones, by the way. So I'm sorry that like I have to like jumpstart my memory. So Merlinite, it can part the veils between the visible and the invisible worlds, opening the doors to deeper intuitive abilities. And, the reason that I connected it to Stonehenge is just because of the name. That's probably one of the naming conventions. I'm actually just kind of looking right now to see if it's called something else. But the reason, so I have a lot of bluestone that I've collected, and bluestone that I have comes from Wales, and that's what they created Stonehenge out of. So just to have fun, I always say, if you really want to have like a very like Stonehenge Arthurian vibe going through your house, you could create a crystal grid with Merlinite stone, with the bluestone and Merlinite. So yes, okay. I just found the other name for it. It's indigo gabbro. Yeah, and it's actually from Madagascar, so it doesn't. It's not native to Wales, like bluestone is. But
it says here one mine in New Mexico is the only one producing it like currently. Oh, there may be more. This is just some weird site that I read that, so who knows if that's a fact or not. But something about a cave in Mexico. But yes, it was named after Merlin. Yes, it was.
So it looks like that sort of.
Yeah, it's
right.
Yeah. It's a really pretty stone. It's like it's almost a black, a deep dark color with this sort of like white vein going through it. And I like that that it's connected to this sort of like mystical energy that when you use it, it's supposed to allow you to sort of like deepen your ability to just sort of like connect with the mystical. And I love all those crystals too. We have crystals all over our house. I know that some people aren't particularly interested in collecting crystals, and that's okay too. I'm just one of those people that feels really close to them. And I do feel a difference when we do set up different crystals around our house. And, the Merlinite in particular, I actually have like an orb or like a sphere, like a crystal ball made of Merlinite. And it's a really cool piece. But it's pretty easy to find. I know that you can find it in shops, and you can also find it in ethically sourced sellers as well. So yeah,
there's some on Etsy, and it's called. It says it's like $68, but it's from Madagascar, like you said, and 62 grams, 120 millimeters. But yeah, they have it on there too. So I'll have to check it out. It looks neat. It's kind of strange looking.
Yeah, it's a good stone for meditation. It's a good stone, especially if you feel like you just want to tap into your psychic abilities, but you want to hold up boundaries. It's a gentle stone to work with too. It's got a good energy. It's a good teacher, just like Merlinite or Merlin. We could think Merlinite is also a good teacher stone.
Yes, definitely. And I know you're into the tarot and do readings, and did you do that for a while? What are some of the decks you use, and when did you start looking into that? I collect decks myself, and like those weird oracles and stuff they have, and all that stuff. Like, I have a lot of cool Norse oracles that are really cool. I have a bunch of those.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. I love collecting tarot. It's kind of interesting. Well, and I always have some cards around me. And so I specifically work with the Rider-Waite Smith, and the edition I have is called the Smith-Waite Centennial. The colors are a little bit more muted, and I like the back of them, but I collect also, just like you. I have so many tarot decks. I have everything from the Thoth to the Golden Girls tarot. So, and I think they're such a pleasure to look at. And there are certain ones that I feel drawn to working with at certain times, just based on, maybe the season or the lesson that I want to work, or, the sort of lesson or the imagery that I want to work with. But I tend to be, I'm a Rider-Waite Smith kind of gal.
Nice. I have a scary tarot. I think it's Donald Tyson. It's like Necronomicon. I'm scared to use it. I think I've used it a few times, but I don't. It's one of those you're like, why do I have this? Oh, this is creepy.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if you could think of a subject, there's likely a tarot deck for it, right? Like there's a tarot deck for everything. And
Looney Tunes.
What?
Yeah, I was gonna say that. That's what there was one there.
The Looney Tunes cartoon.
I think Frater posted that. Ralph.
Yeah.
He posted it, and I shared it. It was saying we need a Looney Tunes tarot.
The Looney Tunes tarot. The Coyote and Roadrunner and all that kind of stuff.
Oh my God, that would be hysterical. Yeah, there are really just some fun, kitschy decks out there. There's one that's on, we were talking about Etsy with the Merlinite. There was a deck that I saw on Etsy. It was like, that's the 90s tarot deck, and Fresh Prince of Bel-Air was in there, and Saved by the Bell, and all sorts of awesome stuff. I'm a 90s girl, so that was a really fun nostalgic deck for me. But I think that when I'm working with clients, I don't necessarily think like I'm going to use the 90s deck. Not that that's a problem. I'm so devoted to the symbolism and the sacred space that Pamela Coleman Smith created in the illustrations of her tarot deck with Mr. Waite. So I just tend to use that. And there's just so much that I feel like when you look at the imagery in perfect divination fashion, you just look at the imagery and you start to have this sort of like psychic or intuitive download of like, okay, this is what this means. Like, it's just such a strong pull. I don't know if I'd get that same feeling with the Golden Girls deck, although that's like still one of my favorites.
One of my favorites, and is a legend, the Arthurian Tarot. and it's from Lillywin, and it's from 1997. But it's just this really cool King Arthur one. But I actually had one of mine get messed up, and I lost it. So I went to go look on eBay for it, and it was like really expensive now. Like some of those tarot decks go up in price, like you can't find them. I finally found one pretty cheap, but it wasn't pretty cheap, maybe like $80. This is a long time ago, but I was like, "What?" When you go back and you look, and they're hard to get, and you can't find them anymore. That gets rough for sure.
I know. It's so true. It's so funny. It's like this sort of like weird thing. If you end up being a tarot collector, it ends up being actually, it could be an expensive hobby. You know, those hard to find or those out of print tarot decks, they get up in the hundreds. Like it's really exciting, I guess. I mean, shocking depending on,
Not
you
for the
know.
wallet. I said not for the wallet, though, for sure. So
Yeah.
those Brian Froud ones, those with the fairies, one of those was very expensive. I have both decks of those, and one's kind of easy to find, but there's another one that's just like, what? You got to do what? I think it's Heart of Fairy or something, but the guy that did all the Dark Crystal art and stuff has like a weird, oracle with fairies and weird stuff. It's got beautiful art, but some of those get expensive too. But it's definitely cool to find the special ones. There's some Norse ones or Viking ones that are kind of rare. I know on Etsy a guy sells an old Norse one that I found that I bought too, and I forget the name of it, but it's on Etsy. So I guess you use the tarot you mentioned, and so I guess I'm just kind of skipping around. And divination, was tarot one of your first ways of divination that you first kind of messed with?
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. And I found divination through television. So it wasn't really a mystical or romantic encounter with tarot, unless you're a 90s kid like I was. There was an episode of My So-Called Life that featured tarot, and I just felt very inspired by it, and said to my mom, can I have a tarot deck? And she took me to a new age store down the road, from where I lived, and the people working there were very generous and patient and helpful. And I really hold a lot of gratitude for them, because, I think that it's really important to have, kind and open-hearted teachers guide you into tarot, and just say, well, hey, let's get you some really good books. And this is a really, they gave me a copy of the Rider-Waite-Smith. And, because there's so many books about the Rider-Waite-Smith, and they really started me on my path, and in such a powerful and positive way. And I'm so grateful for that. So yeah, tarot was definitely the first one for me, and most definitely, my first love. But having the other forms of divination is important too. While I love to read tarot, I know that there are some people that are not particularly interested in reading tarot. They might find that it's just too complex, or they're just not attracted to it. And so that's why I started to go, well, surely there's something else that other people can do. And that's when I started to really explore the strange and unusual, and knowing that, yes, we can read tarot. Yes, we could learn astrology. But if you're not into those really big popular forms of divination, you can also, like we were talking about, you were frozen in time, but Wham and I were talking about bones and trinkets. That's something that's, I think it's gaining popularity. I just came back from doing Pagan Unity Festival up in Tennessee, and there were bone and trinket readers there, and a couple people with books on the subject, and I was really surprised and so excited to see that. But anyways, I guess my point is that, yes, tarot was certainly my first love. And I hope that people are also able to find, their first love, whether it's tarot or scrying or, reading auras, whatever it is, there's something for everybody.
So when it comes to the bone part, where do these bones come from?
Well, and it's funny too, because I'm a vegan. So so actually my bone and trinket kit is more trinkets. And I'm holding right now, this is actually a piece of deer bone, and I found this while camping. And so it's not like they were it's not like I hunted down these. I purchased a couple of the bones that I do have in my kit from a retailer who, I guess ensures that, everything that they collect and gather is ethically sourced. So I think that they're okay. I really encourage people to be very conscientious of this. And there are some people too that actually, and I talk about it in the book a little bit too, they'll just use chicken bones and they'll put markings on the different chicken bones. So if you're a meat eater and you had chicken soup, or you put a whole chicken in the slow cooker, you can take those bones and clean them and cure them and just use those. You don't need to go out and like snatch a sweet coyote from nature and just because you need that in your kit.
Have you seen the Norman Bates Bone Oracle kit? I'm kidding. I'm joking. But for some reason, I was thinking about him in taxidermy. But it's fascinating. God. I've heard of like bone runes and stuff like that. What were some of the other divinations that you started to get into after the tarot? What did you move on to next?
Well, thank you for asking. I love how I've never been asked these questions before, so I'm like, wow, that's great. Let me think about it. So some of the things I got in. So the first one that comes to mind are runes. So it's interesting you had Stephen Flowers on, and while I love runes and feel like I know a bit about runes, I'm sure that Stephen Flowers probably has a lot of, knowledge and wisdom as well. But for me, runes were really powerful because I was in school and I was studying Norse mythology. And at the same time, I was like, maybe I'll take up runes as well. So that was a big deal for me. And then I would also say too, I was really fascinated with automatic writing. And this is a really weird story. I don't know if I've actually shared this story on an interview at all, but not only automatic writing, but like automatic drawing and automatic music. This is a really weird story, but I'll share it. And I hope you don't mind.
Okay. Yes.
It's kind of cool. Yeah. Okay. Well, so, I was brought up in a very, very religious house, which is part of the story, but, there was a piano in the house and I was just very naturally inclined to, being able to play by ear, but I wasn't very good. I couldn't do, the two hands at once and I couldn't read music, but I still loved the piano. And I remember one day I went to church and I probably didn't go to the class I was supposed to, but instead went to the hall wherever there was like a musical hall where they had, set up a piano. And I sat down and tucked into the piano and played like I don't even know. It wasn't me playing. Like I felt like I always say it was like automatic. It was whoop. It was like automatic piano playing, and something was playing through me, and I was able all of a sudden to use both hands and play this very otherworldly melody. And it was to the point where I played so well that somebody walked into the room and said, how are you doing that? Like, this is beautiful. What song is that? And I thought I was in trouble. And I was like, I don't know. I just played the song. I just played the music. I'm just playing around. I'm tinkering around on the piano. And she said, oh no, well, keep playing. It sounds beautiful. And walked away, and I played again, and then it was just back to like it wasn't the same. It was like something came through me and allowed me to do that. So maybe and that was very early on too. That was also, it's very interesting. The age 12 and 13 is a very curious time for people. A lot of development, and for me, it was really a time when I feel like I came into, I don't know, I guess these ability, for lack of better terms, these abilities. And so, yeah, I was reading tarot. I was starting to read about witchcraft and all of a sudden I could sit down and automatic write and automatic, sort of like let something move through me and allow me to share a message, whether it was in language or in melody.
So right now we're doing. I'm looking at some of the astrology sections in your book, and I know we're going through Mercury retrograde right now. Do you look at that a certain way? I know a lot of people seem to hype it up, but it does seem like some weird stuff happens during it more so. But it's definitely seems kind of bone crushing to me for some reason.
Well, I love that you brought that up. So Mercury retrograde, a lot of people do say it's a time like don't travel, don't sign contracts, like, stuff hits the fan. I don't know if I could swear. So stuff hits the fan. Yeah. Yeah. It's a time that, things kind of, turn upside down. And so I guess in a way, the way I look at Mercury retrograde is that it's an opportunity to sort of like maybe bring closure to things that are still lingering with us from a previous time in our lives. But I will tell you, this specific Mercury retrograde that we're in right now lives up to the stereotypical hype, at least for me. You've had these technical malfunctions, and that's sort of like the hyped up version of Mercury retrograde, but it happened. And I feel like I've had that problem too. And I've had sort of like, it's interesting because, I'm doing interviews and I'm talking a lot and I was getting up and doing presentations, but I'm getting tongue tied a lot. I was like, wow, this Mercury retrograde is weirdly Mercury retrograde-y.
Yeah. I didn't know Tolkien was a Capricorn. Wow, I knew Elvis and David Bowie. Didn't know Martin Luther King, but I didn't, or Tolkien. I had no clue about that. That's interesting.
Are you a Capricorn?
Yes, I am.
Oh, yeah.
It's a sea goat. It's a mess. I'm still trying to figure it out. What the hell happened? But yeah, December 26, 1974. Yes. Somehow Pan got a serpentine tail, and there's many theories to that, but they're all pretty weird.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
The whole Pan snake tail. I've always tried to figure out how the hell that happened. Let's use Pan for this and stick a snake tail on it.
Yeah. Well, it's lots of, when I think of the serpent, I think of wisdom and I think of knowledge. And in some cases it could be the forbidden wisdom, in modern day, when we think of the snake, but, connected to Pan, it's just like, wow, really, that is really interesting. That's something I feel like I want to meditate on and think about. But yeah, it really is a weird one. Yeah.
Definitely. What is yours?
Well, I'm a Gemini. And today is Paul McCartney's birthday, which I think is really cool. And there are a lot of good Geminis. There are a lot of weird Geminis out there. I know that Geminis kind of get a lot of, they get teased a lot, along with Scorpios. My sun's in Gemini, my moon's in Capricorn, which is said to be sort of a challenging position. And what is my rising? My rising is Leo, which kind of makes me a little bit more, like I'm good with getting up in front of people and being bold. And I feel like I'm very hopeful. I'm very, not pushy. Well, I wrote in the book, hopefully persistent. That's really for sure. That's definitely me. Do you know your big three?
Someone told me at some point and I had it on paper, but I kind of forgot. Like, I don't remember. I have to get it redone.
Yeah. You could get your natal chart mapped out online. There are a few different websites that you can do that at. You just need to know the date, the time. If you have the exact time, that's highly recommended, and the location of your birth. And it will pop up for you, and so you could read about it. Yeah.
Okay, so you can just like search it out, and it'll do it pretty much.
Yeah, let me find the website that I like. Okay, it's Cafe Astrology. Yep, cafeastrology.com is an example, but like you could probably just like plug into Google too.
Yeah, We should say generate natal chart, and it'll pop up about 10 sites.
Absolutely.
Now, I mean, they'll generate it for you right there. Now, if you want any stuff done with it, they'll charge you for it. But just getting the chart itself is really easy.
Yeah. And I also recommend too, seeing if you want your natal chart read, sitting with an astrologer, because they're able to really hone in on stuff that I don't even go in. I'm welcoming you to astrology and giving you an opportunity to glimpse at like some of the big things. But when you sit down for like a reading with an astrologer, they can like look at like where things sit like degrees wise in your chart, and looking at the angles of how different signs interact with each other. It's really incredible. So I think that's important to keep in mind too, even when you like look online at your sun sign horoscope for the week. There's so much more to your personality than just what your sun sign is.
Yes.
So.
Yes. I'll look it up more. I know someone did it a long time ago, but I was trying to find it because I had forgot. Could have sworn maybe something with Sagittarius or something. I'd have to look. I know you mentioned meditation a lot, and I'm always still trying to figure out meditation, and I think I do it, but it's just kind of it's kind of like you just kind of focus within, and I'm still kind of learning. I guess that's what meditation is always learning or expanding, so to speak. But I guess if you could tell us a little bit about about meditation. And also, let's say, for instance, you're dealing with a situation like now I have a hospice situation. I've never been in a situation like that, but there's strange energies. She has dementia and stuff, so that makes it a little stranger. But I'm always looking for like clearing techniques, or what are ways that you maybe protect yourself from energies, or I know I've read about white light and meditation and things like that, but what are some things you do? And if you could tell us a little bit about meditation.
Yeah, absolutely. So meditation, is a really incredible practice, and for some people, it could feel a little bit daunting. But I want to encourage people to even give yourself 3 minutes a day just to meditate. And meditation doesn't necessarily have to be this sort of like I'm floating above a lotus flower kind of vibe. It could simply be closing your eyes and just breathing in and feeling your body fill with the air, and slowly breathing out, and just really, you'll hear people say like, you just focus on your breath. Meditation is a wonderful way to remind I almost think of it as almost like a Control-Alt-Delete on your body. It really allows you to refocus on the fact that you're a human having a human experience. You're in a present situation. You're in a present moment. You're safe, and you're calm where you are. If you choose to just focus on that breath. So for me too, that's one form of meditation. Some people will say that you can consider taking a mindful walk a form of meditation as well. For example, if you go outside and you go for a walk and you just focus on the way your feet feel as they touch the ground. And that could be very grounding and earthing as well, where you're reconnecting with that earthly Mother Earth Gaia energy. Or even if you're going on a mindful walk, maybe, for example, you have that encounter with a special bird, with the Tweedly bird. Where that all of a sudden becomes part of your meditation. It becomes a message that comes through. I think people too expect that your mind is going to go completely blank, and, it's just going to be total radio silence. And for me personally, I'm super type A, and my mind is always running. For me, I don't think that that's always the case. I could be centered and breathing, and all of a sudden I see this, or I feel or hear this thought like, oh my God, I have to send this email. And that's okay. If you are meditating and you have that experience where all of a sudden you think, I have to call my mother, or like I have to feed the cat, or put the laundry in the dryer, that's okay. You can, the way I look at it is, when those thoughts come through, you could celebrate the fact that you are just killing it in life. You're productive. You're, energized. You hold that thought. And I heard it. It's so interesting. I heard somebody say think of it as a passing cloud. So when you have those thoughts, just allow them to be a passing cloud and release them into the world, and just, bring yourself back to that breath. Or some people will also say, listen for the furthest away sound. Basically, the idea is really to push yourself into that present moment. Some people say it's also meditative to even do chores. So some people will say it feels very meditative to just fold laundry or wash dishes. So
Wash dishes.
Yeah.
That's
And I think it could even be purifying in a way too, where you have the water going over your hands and you just think, this water is purifying my energy. It's purifying my space. It's cleaning these beautiful things that are in my world. I had food. I'm full. I don't know. Like, it could be a very meditative, ability. And as for, I'm so sorry. Hospice is just, it's such a challenging but very meaningful situation. So I'm so sorry that
Thank you.
that's causing tension and holding that kind of space. It causes a tension or a heaviness, and then there's grief and there's anxiety. And what are their clearing techniques vary from person to person, but you did bring up one that is very commonly used. It's more of almost like a protection bubble. People call it the white light bubble. And it's almost like a visualization exercise where you can close your eyes and maybe you're doing that meditated breathing, but what you can visualize is this sort of like bright white light energy surrounding you like a bubble, and holding you in a place where you're protected from the muck of the outside world. It's sort of a way to have like an energetic force field around you. And I think that visualization could be very powerful too.
Definitely. I love creative visualization. I kind of first found out about it through shamanism. And then that creative visualization, I always mess up her name, Shaktag Gaywin book. That was a real good one. And I know she passed not too long ago, but like I was going to ask you, do you know the pink bubble technique?
No, but I want to know it now.
That's from that. Look up that book, Creative Visualization. I don't know if you've heard of her. I know
Yes.
Wham has, but that's a
Dr.
great book.
Dwayne. Yeah. Dr.
Yeah,
Dwayne.
that is a really good book. You'd like it a lot. I'm sure it's on eBay, but you may want to get one of the older ones though. But I'm sure they're both good. But I usually try to get the older copies. I've given them to people, but they're on eBay pretty cheap for $5. But she has something in there called Pink Bubble Technique, which is like a creative visualization where you picture what you want and then imagine it, and it makes you laugh when you hear it in audio or whatever. Just the thought of Pink Bubble Technique.
Yeah.
But yeah, creative visualization with all that is something I'm definitely familiar with. I've noticed white sage helps here too a lot of times, so I need to burn more of that. Sometimes I forget to do it, but I've noticed it can help make it lighter for sure. And then of course I've taken it in the granny's room and you're like, what the hell is that? He's smoking that reefer. But no, it's
That
white
is
sage.
funny.
But yeah, she's had a thing for smoke, like with weed and stuff. So, but anyway, she's in the hospital bed, and she's 90 something, and definitely, I mean, some days are just like, wow, you just think that's it. She's gonna go, but then she don't. She's right back.
Yeah.
And sometimes she's kissed my hand, so it's an honor. And then other times it's like she's so out of herself from, I guess, dementia, that she doesn't have a clue where she is. A lot of times she just don't know where she's at all. You have to tell her. But it's definitely this experience I've never dealt with. I've dealt with near-death stuff I had testicular cancer when I was 17 and went through chemo. That was kind of like my catalyst and after that, my dad died. So I started to have a lot of different paranormal experiences, from seeing ghosts to weird UFO stuff to beings of light. And that was kind of my catalyst. But that was kind of my first brace with death. But this is definitely a new one. It's definitely a hard one. Me and Christina are doing it. So, but as far as meditation, you say meditating with clairability. Is that like your gifts, like different? What do you mean by that?
With you mean with like all the different clairs? Like, what are your clair abilities?
Yes.
Yeah. So let's look at those. Yeah. So and I think when I say clair, it represents different types of ways people receive psychic information. And maybe you have some if you're seeing things or feeling things, but one that a lot of people are familiar with is a term clairvoyant. And clairvoyant represents being able to see something psychic. So maybe whether it's in your mind's eye or if you have your eyes open and you see something, but that clairvoyant message is meant to be a visual representation of a psychic message. Personally, I am clairaudient, and clairaudient means that you receive message through sound.
Mhm.
And I've received clairaudient messages both by hearing like words, like hearing language, but I also hear songs. So there have been times where I've given tarot readings and I'm like, also, you should listen to Houses of the Holy by Led Zeppelin, or something like that, right? Yeah, but and going back to the idea of birds, I wonder if there's some sort of message we have to all follow up with, since we've brought birds up a lot during this conversation. But I'll always say, like, a little bird came to tell me X, Y, and Z. Like, I'll hear certain messages. I also channel, and because I automatic write, I don't even know if I automatic write like the instructions that I give in my book. Like, I almost hear what I need to write down, and then I like furiously, like, and very quickly, like, write out the message. So that's a form as well, as that clairaudient. There's some other really cool, like, clairgustance is clear tasting. That's when you can taste something, but there's nothing in your mouth. I wonder, I also think of, like, I'm going to try and say it. There's clairalience, which is clear smelling. This is when you smell a familiar fragrance, but you can't figure out where it comes from. And so, like, this is almost like a psychic message. And it almost makes me think of, like, when people are doing paranormal research and they're on, like a paranormal investigation, and they also all of a sudden, like, either smell like roses or perfume or cigars. That's very common.
That experience.
Yeah,
that experience. I had a friend many years ago. She's passed now, whose house was suddenly invaded by poltergeist stuff from another place. It didn't have anything to do with her. It's just that her townhouse got invaded with it. And one of the things that was happening were these smells, and it just sounded weird to me when she told me. But when I went to her house, that's exactly what was happening. It was like, it was so strange. You'd just be walking down the hall, and all of a sudden it would be like the scent would just kind of come up your nose, and there was no source for it.
Yeah.
It was really weird.
It's creepy, isn't it?
It was very startling. And
right.
And there were different types of smells in different parts of the house. Like there were some cologne-y kind of perfumey smells, but then there were also like rotted meat smells. It was weird. It was so weird.
And it is truly for better or for worse. I had a very uncomfortable paranormal experience at a haunted cabin that I stayed in North Georgia. And at night, I tried to fall asleep, but woke up to a terrible, very, very, very strong odor of like alcohol and almost like vomit, which sounds gross. But I mean, like, like if you've partied a little too hard and you stumble home and maybe, drank too much and fell asleep on the bathroom floor, like a terrible party night from like college. Like that's what it smelled like to me. And I swear, I thought it was, like I was like, this haunted cabin, they didn't clean it. The sheets are dirty. And I got really upset. And I said, well, when I get up in the morning, I'll contact the Airbnb people and let them know they need to clean. And I woke up, there was no smell. And my boyfriend said, there's no smell. Like, smell the pillows, smell the sheets. Like, it smelled clean. It smelled like bleach. It just came out of nowhere. It ended up turning into a little bit more. But yeah, that was my Claire sentient. I've also smelled nice things too. I've smelled roses and cologne, but that was really clear.
Did Bigfoot come to mind with the odor at all? Is that something that came up?
When I was there, I'm so in love with Bigfoot. Like I love Bigfoot everything. Like I hope that as I kind of like just meet more people, that someday somebody's going to say, we're going to do a Bigfoot investigation. Do you want to come with us? Because I don't care where it is, when it is, I will go. But I thought of that as well, especially in North Georgia. There were Bigfoot sightings in the area. It's an area where, people have encountered it. And there is that belief too, that you smell Bigfoot before you see him, but what the experience that I had was very human. Like somebody was there who had a problem. It was unresolved and they were still very in limbo maybe. But I've never experienced sort of like that musty, very natural wild man smell that's associated with Bigfoot. But it's very apparent when people do have that encounter, I guess. Have either of you had that?
Yes.
What? Oh my gosh.
Yes. I've smelled the smell, or that yeah. Yeah. There's Gail Beatty, who is, I'm up in the Mid-Hudson Valley in New York. And so the local Bigfoot researcher here, Gail Beatty, when she goes out, on the field thing, to look at a new site, there have been several times where either we've smelled it out there, like I've gone out with her and we've smelled it, or there was one time when I was meeting her back at her house after she'd been out, and she brought the smell home with her.
Wow.
She came in there. It was like, it's not like she smelled like it. And then she came into the house. It was like she was in the house for a little bit, and then all of a sudden it was there.
It really makes you wonder, is it just a biological thing when it gets to that kind of experience? That's really, when you smelled it, did you feel uncomfortable or
not? Well, kind of surprised. I mean, not out in the field. I didn't. I mean, I have felt other types of discomfort out in the field. One of the sites that we went to, there was one whole area where whenever anybody went into it, and we didn't know this because we were going into it at different times, like we'd split up. And so I went into that area at one point, and then, different of the other investigators went in at other times. And what we were supposed to do was note down every time we saw something weird or found something or whatever, and then we'd all compare notes. Well, it turned out that there was this one spot where whenever anybody went into it, they just didn't feel very good. You know what I mean? It was like, for me, I just felt kind of disoriented enough that I actually got dizzy and fell over, which is unusual for me. But then as soon as I got up and got out of there, I was fine. But then there were two of the guys, they came down with really bad headaches and nausea, so like there was obviously something going on in this one area. But that's the only time I've ever been out uncomfortable out in the field. But when that happened in her house, we were just all like, whoa,
wow. Yeah.
What does that mean?
Right.
Does that mean it's in here with us? You know what I mean? And what does that mean? We're in the kitchen. We're sitting around the kitchen table. What does that mean?
Wow. Yeah. And the Hudson Valley itself is it's an interesting zone.
Yeah. Well, I wrote a book about it a year and a half ago.
Well, I'm going to have to get a copy of it because I've just been so fascinated with the Hudson Valley and, sort of the things that happen there and the legends and the idea of like the Hudson Triangle. And
right.
Yeah.
Well, it's called Mysterious Beauty, Living with the Paranormal in the Hudson Valley.
Oh, wow. That sounds cool. Okay, great. Now I have two things: creative visualization and mystic beauty.
Mysterious.
I got one more for you if you're interested. I have a
And
Bigfoot
and
book.
and the
I have a
author's
Bigfoot
name is
book.
Dr. C.S. Matthews, because that's my official name. I'm Wham here, but
Yeah.
I actually have a PhD and wrote my dissertation on UFO abduction narratives.
Wow.
But and Stephanie knows all about this book.
Oh, good. Yeah, and she's wonderful to talk to.
She can tell you about this book.
Yeah.
And if you want a Bigfoot book ever, Praise for the Hairy Man, The Secret Life of Bigfoot. I wrote it with Andrew Colvin. It's just like interviews with different people about Bigfoot. It's on Amazon. It's pretty interesting.
So look for it.
It's just like different interviews with people. I kind of lean towards the Kawani, Laparitis. He did Psychic Sasquatch. I kind of have a multi-dimensional view of it all for sure. And I know other people don't, and they get mad when you say that, but I don't care. Let them get mad. But they never catch one. So until you catch one, I don't want them to really, but you know what I mean. As far as I think there's something to them, they may have like cloaking abilities or something like that for sure. So as far as have you had any other paranormal experiences like through witchcraft or different ones that stand out that you want to tell us about?
Loads and loads of experiences. Absolutely. Let me try and think of a more. I mean, the one that the most recent one I had was absolutely this March when I went to North Georgia and had that phantom smell. That was really profound, and it was shocking too, because I tend to be somebody who really tries to be very protective and very thoughtful about walking into things and not having negative encounters, but this was a very negative one for me. I was physically attacked, had that feeling of being held down. So that was really the biggest one. I'm trying to think of another one that I've had recently. I've always wanted a Bigfoot encounter. I know that some people, people seem to be very terrified of that. So maybe I don't. I've always had, my whole life, I've had UFO encounters, even starting as a young child. When I was very young, when I was very, very young, I had a lot of paranormal experiences. So maybe I'll share this one with you. And this is interesting because it has nothing to do with witchcraft. It actually deals with Catholicism. So it's a really interesting one. I was very young. So, I mean, this was like one of the first, like, let's try and remember things as a young child. So I must have been 6, 7, kindergarten, first grade, very young. I was sick. It was like a sick kid kind of week for me. I had a high fever. I was stuffed up. I had ear infections. I had eye infections. I was just a gross, snotty kid. And I was unhappy. I was sick in bed. And I remember I was laying in bed and I remember the hum of the humidifier, but all of a sudden, the most beautiful music started to play from the foot of my bed. And I'll never be able to describe the etheric and profound healing beauty of the sound that I heard, but it was harp. And I just remember sitting as a little kid in bed, just listening to this harp music play, and I didn't know what it was. I didn't want it to go away, but it was almost like it came to help me sleep, because obviously as sick as I was, I couldn't sleep, but the harp played and I fell asleep to it. And within a couple days, I improved. I got better. And at the time, I had to go to catechism. As a kid, that was where, I went to that Catholic school where you learn about, that sort of Christian Catholicism. Obviously, I'm not Catholic anymore. It didn't stick. But I remember bringing it up to the nun or the teacher, whoever it was that was teaching the class. And I said, you know, what happened to me. I heard this harp, you know, when I was sick, very little kid too. So however I explained it, but I remember her response was, it was Mother Mary coming to visit you. And ever since Mother Mary visited me, I've had all sorts of paranormal experiences. I can't explain what that was. I don't know if it was Mother Mary, if it was sort of like a heavenly encounter, an ancestor coming to visit to help me heal. I've never really been an angel person, although I'm not against it. I've just never been the type of person to, you know, work with angels. But that was certainly you know, an experience. But on the total flip side of that, as a kid, I also had tons of nightmares about gray aliens. Um, a lot of people have suggested that I go into hypnosis to revisit that, and I'm like, I'm good. Like, I don't need to revisit that. We're good. But I mean, the nightmares about these sort of like interactions with the aliens were, you know, happening in childhood, and were so extremely vivid that to this day, like, I still remember the texture of the skin, you know, of these things that I was encountering. Or even like, I get the heebie-jeebies and this terrible drop in my stomach when I remember, you know, being like 7 years old and dreaming about them, like kind of like levitating or like walking through walls in front of me. Luckily, I don't, thank you. I'm going to knock on wood saying this too. I don't have these nightmares anymore, but I had them very vividly as a kid. But the whole UFO thing certainly follows me. I've seen UFOs my entire life, you know, not regularly. It's not like I go outside and go, oh, look. But very vivid experiences all the way from Otis, Massachusetts, all the way down to Tennessee. I've seen things. You know, and I'm kind of anticipating something happening just because we're, you know, on the coast. We live, you know, right by Tybee Beach, and the stars out there are very bright. And I assume that, you know, if we keep stargazing, we'll have an encounter out there as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I actually, in my younger years, had a weird North Georgia mountains cabin experiences where I was with someone and they had a dream that something was trying to kill them, like crush them with a rock or something weird, and they were all upset, had to leave, and on the way we were leaving, my nose started bleeding, and I don't know what the hell happened, but the devil went down to Georgia more than once, apparently, I think for sure. But
Yeah.
and if you want to see some funny UFO stuff lately, do on YouTube, UFOs, Fox News, and watch all those nuts freaking out about UFOs. It's beautiful. It's great.
I know that there's a lot, you know, I'm very active on Twitter. So I've kind of heard about all of that secondhand just by reading, you know, tweets and everything like that.
It's funny for sure.
Yeah.
I don't watch Fox News, but I've seen the stuff on YouTube with UFO stuff. But just seeing those personalities, you know, freaking out, it's just
Like,
it's great.
Was it like Rudy Giuliani? He was talking to Nick Pope and then, you know, plugging my pillow and then talking about UFOs. It's just like a little too,
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's
the age of Aquarius, right?
It's a nightmare. So what about food divination? Is that like tea leaves, or I mean, is there weirder stuff with food divination?
How cool is that? Like and this is something that you could really take away with too. You could create divination with anything. I really truly believe that if there's something you want to develop, you know, with divination, you can do it. So like, Wham, I love the idea of like your friends getting together and creating these cards out of, you know, found pictures and found phrases. That's a great example of developing, you know, divination that works for you. And I almost think that with food divination as well. You know, tasseography or the reading of tea leaves is something that's very, very common. People do that with loose leaf tea, where whether you're giving yourself a reading or you have somebody else sitting with you, you know, they drink the tea. They leave a very, very tiny bit of the liquid in. And there's almost like this ritual where you turn the cup and you put the saucer on top of the cup or a napkin, and you flip it over and then pop it back. And what you do is you look at the leaves and you interpret the shapes that you see in front of you. And really there are, I give a few examples of like common things that you could see, some of which I don't remember off the top of my head, but let's find a couple. The thing is like, you can like go and find different books that give like interpretations, like, well, if you see a boat, it means a journey. But one thing I encourage people to do too is when they're reading tea leaves is to think, if I see something, what does it represent to me? And make it a personal interpretation. And the example that I always think about too is that if you see, for example, like a black cat in the bottom of your teacup, some people might see that and think, this is not a good omen. Don't go on this path. A black cat could be, bad luck. For me, my cat is this sweet little, very energetic, very silly black cat. So if I saw a black cat on the bottom of my teacup, I'd think really positive things. I'd think, oh, you're moving into a playful time. And so I really encourage people, if they want to read tea leaves, like absolutely go out and find a tea leaf divination dictionary. I have a few in my book. For example, like if you see hearts, it could mean love. If you see arrows, it could maybe indicate news. Seeing stars could be good luck. But at the same time, maybe start collecting different interpretations that are personal to you, and see what would you, if you saw this in real life, like what does it represent to you? But some other funny forms of divination. There's one, and I'm gonna try and remember this. It's called pyromancy. Yep, there it is. Pyromancy is the divination with cheese. So like people,
nice,
right?
nice, love that.
So there were different ways of reading and divining with cheese. One of which was you would interpret the shapes of the holes in cheese. And so you would look at the holes or maybe the patterns of the holes in the cheese and create a divinatory message based on that. And another funny one that I thought was kind of interesting too, you could also read the way the mold forms on cheese. So maybe you leave a piece of stinky cheese out somewhere and let it mold, and then read the mold as your sort of psychic interpretation. I certainly wouldn't want to waste a piece of cheese to do that, but I'm not eating cheese right now anyways, but I know that cheese is loved by everybody.
Cheese spread divination.
Cheese is good. Cheese is good.
Cheese spread divination. I want to try that.
Yeah, I know. You could always, and see, you're creating your own divination. So you might do cheese whizomancy, where you get cheese whiz, and you close your eyes and you ask a question, and you spray it all over a cracker, and divine the shape that it makes.
Definitely. I noticed in the Ogham Druidic and Celtic studies, your sections that you talk about. I'm trying to understand that. I know I've heard of that. I know I have one oracle by that Philip Cargam guy that's real cool. It's like this Druid animal oracle that's really nice that I love. And I guess, how do you use that for divination? It's based on different trees, right?
It is and it isn't. It is. They're based on different. It's very it looks almost similar to runes, doesn't it? But it's a completely different system. Each of the symbols, yes, they represent a tree, and they all have their own divinatory meaning. And there are different ways that people read them. A very common one is people will carve the symbols, each of the symbols, into a stick. And we're circling back to Etsy and our small shops. But there are some really cool kits of the Ogham. Some people call it Om. Sometimes my pronunciations aren't as good, especially in the middle of Mercury retrograde. Exactly. But you can get Ogham kits where they actually have this specific type of wood used for each of the the woods. And so people will take them and some people will keep all the sticks in a bag and pull maybe one out a day and read that message and go, okay, well, I got the ogum that represents Rowan. So that means today I have to, try and stay grounded. I have to use common sense. I have to be protected. That's one way of reading them. I don't have a really fancy proper ogum kit. I think it's time for me to go on Etsy and probably get one of the ones that somebody hand makes with each of the different unique types of wood go along with each symbol. But I painted each of the symbols on little discs of birch wood because I really like birch. I think it's pretty. So yeah, it's a really pretty one.
Check those out
Yeah.
on Etsy. I'll have to check that out. Wham, anything you want to ask about from the book?
I've already asked about stuff from the book. I did that while you were gone.
Yeah.
We talked about all kinds of stuff. I know. Let me think. I'm still thinking about paranormal stuff, I'm afraid. Now that we've gotten all into paranormal stuff.
We could go there too.
Well, I guess what it is I think it's really interesting the kind of overlap between these divination techniques and the paranormal, because what we're really talking about are communicating with beings in realms that we just simply don't see with our eyes, or that we don't immediately perceive with our with our senses. And divination, it seems to me, is a way by which we sort of open ourselves up to those patterns that allow us to kind of let information that's obviously there already, it's just sort of there, but we're not immediately perceiving it. And so we use these tools, to make contact or to make sense of the patterns. But then when we are studying paranormal stuff, we're also looking for patterns. We're looking to try to understand what it is that is appearing to us.
Wow.
And I've often wondered, although I have not done this, I've often wondered whether it might not be possible to use divination techniques with, like, to find Bigfoot or to find UFOs.
That's a great idea.
I mean, I know some people, they'll channel like aliens or whatever, but but I don't know whether those are really aliens or not. I mean, who knows? But I mean, to try to, I do know that I have known one investigator that would use a pendulum.
Yeah.
Or
these are the other ones that people use too, the dowsing rods.
To try to find places of, like if they were doing a survey of a place where like Bigfoot or like a haunting had been, or UFOs had been seen, that they would take things like that. Like this person I know uses a pendulum, and they would go out and they would see whether there were some areas where the pendulum would very specifically react in certain ways and start there, which I always thought was really interesting.
Yeah.
And so there's obviously an overlap here. So,
yeah. And to your point too, one thing that I think is really interesting is that divination doesn't necessarily just have to be fortune telling, as in we don't need to use divination simply to say, this is going to happen to you at a future time. So I really always like the idea of exploring how can we use divination for things other than this is when you're going to go on a date. This is when you're going to make money. This is when you're going to get a job. Like, let's look at ways of using divination to take a deeper dive into the world around us right now, to seeing beyond the five senses. And so I love the idea of using different divination techniques with paranormal investigations, to your liking, to your comfort level as well, I should say too, because there are some people who may not feel comfortable doing that.
Well, right. Exactly.
But I like the idea of why not go out in the woods and draw some cards to say, you know, is there a Bigfoot here? Why not give it a shot? You know, there are people that use tarot cards in paranormal investigations. You know, I think, for example, too, the folks that do Hellier, they're very open to, you know, using divination through their investigations as well. And I think I really admire that. I think that's really cool to say, you know, bring out your oracle cards, bring out your runes, bring out your tarot, and see if that corresponds with, you know, the paranormal investigations that we're having. Why not? I like to use tarot for things even like spirit of place, like what is the energy of the area that I'm in.
Right.
And I like the idea too that you said where, you know, looking for signs in nature, you know, we can use that as messages as well to just understand the energy around us. So I love the idea of people bringing in divination tools. One that I talk about in my book that I think would be really fun to use on paranormal investigations. I don't think I have it in hand's reach, but it's described in the book. My editor and like one of my dearest friends, Tanya, watched a movie a few years ago where the movie had these like dice with letters on them.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, you know, dice is another form of divination. You could throw the dice and interpret the numbers that you're receiving to be a divinatory message. Well, these dice that Tanya introduced to me have letters on them. And so if you throw them, it's almost like playing like divination Scrabble. You know, you could throw these alphabet dice and all of a sudden you may have words that are in front of you that may be a message. And so I think that would be a lot of fun to play with, you know, and I say play, you know, utilize, I should say, during a paranormal investigation, just to see, do you get any words or messages that come up with the alphabet dice?
Well, and this is
really cool.
This is reminding me of another book, which is a book that actually Gail and I have used. It's called Forbidden Bigfoot by a woman named Lisa A. Shiel, and that's Shiel. And the whole book's title is called Forbidden Bigfoot, Exposing the Controversial Truth About Sasquatch, Stick Signs, UFOs, Human Origins, and the Strange Phenomena in Our Own Backyards. This woman describes a phenomenon that does occur a lot with people who have like regular encounters with Bigfoot, you know, like on their properties, that they will often report that they will find
Oh,
sticks that have been laying in these odd patterns where they obviously could not have fallen that way, and other little things like we have found some of that stuff out here, and sometimes you'll find like little mounds of stones with things on top, you know, things that have obviously been constructed that like maybe weren't there before. We've had, she also describes very clear instances where her horses' manes and tails have been braided, you know, which is, you know, that harkens back to fairy lore, obviously. Sure. But some of these signs are really interesting, and I know that in my indigenous teachers that I've talked to here, where I live, have told me that it was not uncommon in the past for Masinkwe, who is their designation for the being that we would probably call Bigfoot. Okay, that's, I mean, obviously they see that entity a little differently, but Masinkwe and then Pequodjij, who are the little people. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. I've got to go now that I've mentioned them. I have to go do a tobacco offering. You're not supposed to talk about them in the summertime, but it just comes out because I'm white and I forget. Um, but they would leave little signs like that at different times. You know, the little sticks and the little and they meant things. And according to my teachers, they knew at one time what those things meant, but they don't really know so much anymore what they mean. You know, some of that knowledge has been lost. And but the fact that some of that stuff is showing up again, I find really interesting. You know?
Yeah, and that's so fascinating. You know, wow. Yeah, leaving the offering sounds like a wonderful idea. And I wonder too if there's a way that you could engage in a conversation, you know, through those symbols. Like what happens if you leave an offering and then you receive a sign or a message?
I don't know. It's like what my indigenous teachers tell me is that you're really not supposed to engage them.
Oh, okay.
And the reason why you're not is because that was something that specialists did, you know, people who specialized in doing that. That's what they would do. And because it's really difficult for people who are not specialists to know the good ones from the bad ones, because the bad ones will talk to you the same way the good ones will. And so we can't really tell the difference. So, so they sort of like warn you against it. Like, don't do that. And it's not because I'm white. It's because they won't do it either.
Understood. Well, and that's a great point, and even goes to all divination in general too, is you know, to be mindful of the messages you receive, but to also use your own intuition to say, you know, is this a message that I'm going to hold near and dear to me, or is this something that I just need to put on the back burner? What are my protective practices? Am I knowledgeable enough to follow this path and continue doing this? You know, who are my resources? Yeah, really, that's a great point. Well, and it also made me think too. Oh, sorry.
And also just respecting other cultural differences.
I love it. Yeah, being respectful and honorable. Yeah, absolutely. And what you said too made me think also of, like, because we did bring the fae up a little bit, made me think too, where you always hear that, you know, don't eat the food, don't eat the fae food. You know, so just you know, being mindful not to do anything that could be harmful. Yeah.
Right. Well, and also I think part of the reason why it's like showing up right now in some places is, frankly, there've been a couple times when we've gone out in the field and we've seen stuff like that. And I kind of get a sense it's almost always where where these signs appear, they're almost always sort of like at the boundary of a property, you know, or like, you know, like where like a meadow becomes a woodland or something. And there's I've always wondered whether that's not like a warning. It's kind of in the sense that this is our house. This is our house.
Yeah.
You know, it's a boundary.
Yeah, and that's that liminal area.
And before you go in, you need to, you know, like make an offering or do something or announce yourself. You don't just come in, you know, with your cameras and guns or whatever the hell you got, you know. It's,
right.
So we've tended to be really respectful when we see that kind of stuff. You know, we'll do little tobacco offerings. We were taught how to do that, and just sort of, you know, try to leave certain places alone if we see stuff like that, because, you know, honestly, we don't know what it means.
Right.
You know.
Right. And I guess that's why it's so valuable too, to go ahead and try and record, you know, your encounters to see if you can find those patterns and what happened before you saw it, what happened after you saw it, you know, what was your interpretation. I don't know, I think that's really interesting. It looks like Jeffrey got frozen up again.
He got frozen up again. There, see, there, boop, he's gone.
That's funny. That Mercury retrograde, it's coming at us.
You know, it's a stronger Mercury retrograde than usual, because it was Mercury retrograde with the moon in Gemini.
And also, didn't we have
Mercury was in Gemini, and then the new moon was in Gemini.
Yeah, well, and then we also had the lunar eclipse and then a solar eclipse. So I found the time between that lunar and solar eclipse to be intense.
Yeah, it's Mercury retrogrades don't bother me too much because of my chart. They don't bother me too much. I'm a Leo, but I have a Capricorn rising, Saturn and Capricorn in the first house, and a Taurus moon. So I'm very, I'm not overly annoyed by Mercury when it goes. I use it to get stuff done. Stuff I haven't gotten done, I use it to get stuff done. But I have noticed it's been a little frantic this time. There's a lot of just weird thoughts and emotions, and just sort of, I don't know.
That's great. Yeah. We were saying earlier too, I really like to think of Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde happens often. It's not like it's this like uncommon, strange, terrible event. It happens, throughout the year, and you're not going to stop driving or signing contracts or, using your computer just because Mercury is in retrograde. We need to look at it as an opportunity to, like you said, button up those loose ends. It's like, this is a time for me to maybe we need to reflect on something that we just haven't closed on, or maybe there's an open wound that needs healing and we just need to release it. I like to think of those, and actually she's in the book. Susie Kerr Wright is somebody that I spoke to about astrology, to get her opinion and her voice, because she's a great astrologer. And she always said that with retrograde, you can use all those RE words, reflect, release, respond. Those are sort of the things I think about with retrograde. But yeah, this one right now that's happening is a doozy. So I'll be happy.
It ends next week. So
that's right. And it's funny too, because I actually fly on the 26th. I'll be flying up to your neck of the woods. I'll be going up to Connecticut. So not too far from you. So it'll be the first time that I've been on a plane since before the pandemic.
Oh. Well, it's good that you're going after it goes direct. So
yeah, it is. And I've been vaccinated, so I'm not too anxious, but I've always been a nervous flyer anyways. So I'll take lots of deep breaths. I'll probably get some Pinkberry when I stop over in Baltimore to have something satisfying and soothing for my flight up through New York and into Connecticut.
So where are you landing?
Bradley. I go into Bradley,
okay, that's not bad.
Which is great too, because they have all sorts of like Hartford Whalers stuff and the gift shops there, which I think is super cool. And and my family lives right outside Hartford. I'm looking forward to my journey up there this time. I'm going to be visiting Gunji Wamp in Groton, Connecticut.
Oh, yeah.
And then I'm also going up to America's Stonehenge. So I'll be seeing that as well. I really like to visit sacred sites. And so that's really, really special to me. This is my second visit to Gunji Wamp and my second visit to America's Stonehenge. So I'll be interested to see what is it that I pick up on intuitively visiting a site for the second time. Maybe thinking, the spirit of place is more familiar with me now that I'm there. I've returned, like, I legitimately want to understand what's going on here. You could talk to me now, that kind of feeling. And maybe when I visit there too, I'll bring the dowsing rods or I'll bring a pendulum. I think it might be interesting. Even I bring tarot with me to sacred places too. And like to pull a couple cards to see, what conversation comes up from the cards in response to the different locations as well. So it might be fun to see what happens at Gunji Wamp, because it's such a mysterious location.
Yeah.
Well,
if you ever decide you want to come up to Hudson Valley, just let me know. I know where all the good spots are. And the book sort of talks about all the different types of. It's kind of a survey book. It talks about all the different kinds of experiences, and a lot of the various locations where these things repetitively occur, and it covers it's got like a timeline in the back that covers about the last 40 years.
Wow.
And how these events have sort of overlapped Like maybe at one point, in one part of the valley, there was one set of things going on, but then at the same time, in another part of the valley, this stuff was going on, but nobody knew that the two different things were going on, like UFO flaps and Bigfoot things, but they're happening about the same time, but in different places. So, 40 miles apart, but nobody pays any attention.
It makes you wonder about, what is happening to trigger all of that stuff occurring around the same time.
Right. Well, yeah, that's a John Keel question,
Yeah.
So let's see, we're at 9:52. So normally what Jeffrey does at this time, because the show basically ends at, well, I'm at Eastern time, so I guess it's 8:52 to you. Is that he always asks, okay, so where can people reach you? Do you have a website, author's page?
Yeah, sure. There are a few different places. If you're a social media person, I'm the most active on Twitter, and you can find me. My name there is Kiki D333. So that's a great place if you want to connect with me on social media. If you want, you can also find my website, kikidombrowski.com. If the name is too challenging to spell, just Google Kiki Tarot, and I tend to come up right at the top of the search. And I also have an author's page now. I built an author's page on Amazon. So if you're an Amazon shopper, you can follow me and see what I'm up to. I have some more projects in the works. I have a lot of writing projects happening. So you can follow me and keep up with the stuff that comes out. I think those are probably the best ways to reach me. And if you go to my website, Kiki Dombrowski, you could find all of my, social media. I'm I'm even on Pinterest. Like, you can find me anywhere. But, and if you find me on Facebook, please, send a friend invite. Just let me know how we know each other. Like, hey, I heard you on X, Y, and Z, I met you at something, just so I know. And yeah, you could email me anyway through kikidombrowski.com. So yeah.
All right. So those are all the places that you can be gotten. So I'm waiting for Joe he's going to pop in here at any moment. And then he'll be able to wrap us up, because there's some kind of thing that you're supposed to say, that this is Church of Mabus, blah, 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 which, of course, since Jeffrey always does it, I have no idea what it is.
Well, it has been such a pleasure talking to both you and Jeffrey. And I'm so, grateful that you would, spend time with me tonight. And I'm really eager to get your book and Jeffrey's book on my shelves. So I'll have to order them.
Right. Well, and like I said, talk to, I've had several conversations. I mean, Steph and I have done a number of different interviews, and she knows all about the book, and she can fill you in on stuff too. She can also fill you in on how the weirdness that Jeffrey and I are at different times. So, the different things that we do. So, but it's been good to have you on. So I'm glad that you are a your Leoness, your Leo ascendant is a presence in the room.
Thank you. I notice it sometimes more than other times. Like, a lot of times I really feel the moon and cap energy in my life a lot more, but every now and then I do or say something and I'm like, I think that was my Leo rising.
It just kind of blurted out right there.
Who said that? That wasn't me,
Yeah. Yeah, well, it's interesting having Leo Capricorn energy, because I have that too. Yeah. Those are two really interesting energies, because you would think the Sun and Saturn, that they would be really opposed to each other in certain ways. One is the ultimate expansion, or an ultimate expansion. One is contraction, right. But the thing that they both share is this sort of sense of dignity.
Absolutely. And you need expansion and contraction to give birth, right? So
Yeah.
you need a little of both. But yeah, I love that. They are truly dignified.
Yeah, they both are really concerned with dignity, so you don't want to humiliate them.
No, absolutely not. Yeah. I tend to go a little bit melodramatic if I get embarrassed or
Oh, well, that happens. So
well, yeah.
I guess that's the show. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just waiting for Joe to show up. I don't know where he is. I mean, it suddenly occurred to me: what if he went offline and we're just like in the void?
We're just gonna chat and chat all night. Well, at that point, then we're just gonna start pulling cards, and
Well, I mean, we're still live because I have the live ticker up here.
I see it. Yeah, I know.
So we're still going. Yeah. Well, you know about this, don't you? You know about the Edward Gorey deck. Have you heard about?
I know about Edward Gorey, but I didn't know there was a deck.
Yeah,
That's kind of cool.
He created a deck. It's called the Fantod Pack, and it's not a tarot deck. It's just a deck, and it has stuff in it like, well, here's one. The Tunnel.
That is awesome. That is such a cool card. It's almost like I just want to print it out and put it on the wall somewhere in my office.
And then he has weird stuff like this.
What's that?
The child.
Look at that child.
It's a skeleton. Look at that.
Oh my God.
A little toy dog. It's so freaky. And or this one right here. The urn.
Oh my God. That is like
that's the style that they're in. And you can do readings with them. I mean, they're all, rather morbid, as you can imagine. Rather morbid and kind of odd. And then there's this other deck. I like to collect weird decks, just stuff that's off the wall. There was somebody that sort of as an art project, I think you can find this online. They just created a deck that it's not a tarot deck. I mean, who knows what it is? It's sort of done in the style of a tarot deck, but it isn't like a whole deck of any kind. But like, here, I'll show you one. Here's one. The molar beetle.
I mean, it's a really cool picture. That's an awesome illustration.
I know, but see, look, that's a molar up there.
That is so weird and cool.
There he is. There he is.
Yeah, and I love Oracle decks, not only because it, excuse me. I mean, like the illustrations are so fascinating and so interesting. Oracle decks are such an inviting way for people to get into cartomancy, right?
Exactly.
Whatever, like if you're a little intimidated by tarot, which I think everybody, no matter how long you've been reading, it could feel overwhelming. Like you could get an Oracle deck on any topic and just really, and I think this is important too. Divination doesn't always need to be heavy and serious and foreboding. You can enjoy yourself with a good reading. Look at that.
The fallen moon. That's
almost like Monty Python-esque.
Yes, except they're very strange, and they're not like in any particular. Oh, this one is bizarre. I have no idea. Angel stomachs.
I mean, what would you tell somebody if they got the angel stomachs for a reading?
I guess it would be like, I wonder what that would mean.
Like it's time to buy Pepto-Bismol.
You say butterflies in your stomach?
Drink more water.
Or this one, the Cloud Doctor.
Oh, he is creepy. Ooh, I don't like him at all.
Yeah, isn't that weird? Yeah, see, they're just odd. They're just really odd. I have another one that it's done in the form of like a playing deck, not like tarot, but like
Mhm.
but it's all based on, it comes from Germany, and it's all based on industrial things.
Wow.
So, like a blasted, wasted industrial landscape. So it's like towers, like the factory towers. It's creepy too. Let's see if I can find it here. Well, I'm just waiting for Joe to close this down. Here he is. Here he is.
Yeah, I'm a close y'all out since y'all's host disappeared.
And would you do the official closing too?
I will. Y'all have been listening to Church of Mabus with Jeffrey Pritchett and Wham and our lovely guest here. Guys, don't forget, coming up next is what are we on tonight? Oh, Science and Beyond. On tonight I have John and Emily Goodwin. We're going to be talking about Writers of the Future. Also, we have 3 shows up for People's Choice Awards. So we'll be discussing those 3 shows tonight that are all up. The reason we're bringing them up is voting starts at the end of the month, so people get out there and vote. I know the Centralist is up for it, the Outer Realm and Writers of the Future are all up for awards this year. So be sure to check that out. But on that note, I'm going to let y'all get out of here. Remember, people, y'all are listening to Church of Mavis tonight.
Thank
Everybody,
you.
anything else? Good night, guys, and stay tuned for the next crazy people.
Now,